Hello, I'm Peanut Butter Raisin Bread, and this is a drawing that I made. In about October of 2020, I had this idea for like mundane monsters. As you can probably tell, in middle school and stuff, I was very interested in like Monster High. But that's neither here nor there. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about this drawing that I'm drawing. You can see the thumbnails that I'm doing. I was just trying to figure out the perspective of her body, like how I wanted her to be facing the camera. Basically the concept is sort of like supernatural monsters and creatures doing mundane things, and like I said, I came up with this sort of concept in October, so the spooky season, and I made her little bed frame a coffin, which I'm very proud of. Super ingenious, and no one's really thought about that before, to have vampires in coffins, so and so my idea was just to have her play a Switch, just chilling in her room playing video games. One thing that I sort of got weird here is the length of her body versus the length of the bed, which is something that I figured out, I think a little bit sort of into the drawing, and then I correct it later. But as you can see, I'm getting like too bogged down in the details of her like fingers and Switch and like the things that are around her, as you do. But at this point in October 2020, I sort of really didn't do, like, I was trying to figure out what to do like digital art wise. I just graduated college in March of 2020, and like that was like graphic design, and I'd gotten a graphic design job, so in my free time I still try to draw whatever I can, but I couldn't figure out how to make digital art that I actually liked the look of and liked the style of. And so this was me just like, I came up with a fun concept, and that's me fixing the size of the bed. And this is me just coming up with a fun concept and then just, doing something that would take a lot of time as sort of like a meditative practice, and it was turning out, like a lot better than I thought it was going to, I think this drawing as a whole took around 20 to 25 hours, according to Procreate, the Procreate statistics, which is what I used to make this. But yeah, for the drawing itself, I mostly used, I took the brush Studio Pen, which is a default brush in Procreate, and then I changed it a little bit. I believe I changed the taper a little bit, and maybe like the maximum and minimum size, because the maximum and minimum size go by pixels. So if you like a particular brush but it's too small for like the particular like canvas that you're working on, I would just change like the maximum and minimum size to what you need it to be for your particular canvas size, and that won't necessarily change the brush in like a super big way. And if you want to change it back, then just sort of like write down what it was before, and you can change it back. But then I also changed the grain of the brush to make it a little bit grainier than what it was, because it was just like the smooth Studio Pen brush, and then I gave it sort of like a pencil grain, so then it looks a little bit sketchy. And in a couple of my other drawings going forward, because after this one I did the Frankenstein one and the witch drawing, which I'll have voiceovers for them too, but like you can see like the line art looks a little bit different from each one because I was sort of playing with that brush and trying to figure out what I liked and what I didn't like and like how to change it. In the end, I don't use that brush anymore. I use Jasensky ink. Is that what it's called? I think so. But that's another brush that's a default of Procreate. Like if you can't find a brush that you like, buying a bunch of brush sets is good. But one thing that I do is take brushes that I almost like I'm like I like this, but it's not quite what I'm after, and just the defaults in Procreate, and then change them around and sort of figure out what I want. And so in this, I was still trying to figure out what I liked, and this is still the sketch, and gosh, I sketched for such a long time because I wanted it to be perfect. And I can never go into especially back then, I'm getting a lot better at sort of the motion and action of line art now, but I could never get it right. The first you do the sketch and then the line art. I had to do the sketch and then another sketch and then another sketch and then another sketch until it looked like line art. And then I took that and then sort of drew under it to make it look sketchy but clean, instead of having like all of like the super sketchy stuff under it that made it look muddy. I put like very intentional like off-center lines under the line art to give it like depth, but to not make it look like it's a sketch, which is why this ended up taking 23 hours. And then for the entire thing I just used that studio pen tool, and this is one of the reasons why it took so long, is that gosh dang bookcase, and I wanted to make every single book look different, because that's what a regular bookcase would look like. There would be a few books that might be like from the same series or something like that, but usually they're not the same size or shape. At least my bookcase isn't. It's, a hot mess, except for, the, one entire shelf on my bookcase that's, like, all the Wheel of Time books. So they're, like, all the same and have the same type of cover, but then the rest of them, I'll have, like, a couple of books that are from the same series, but other than that, there's nothing really, that looks the same. And then I really also like bookshelves that have like knickknacks and things like that, and I wanted to make this room look really lived in and interesting. So I have papers on the floor and clothes, and then a bunch of Monster Energy drinks, because this is a gay vampire teenager, so of course they drink Monster Energy drinks. And then also, since this is a vampire, a bit goth, so I put The Cure in there, and then also a Frankenstein poster, and then also a Dracula poster, and then I wanted to make her look a bit cutesy, because I believe from what I can tell, all goth people probably love Animal Crossing. But that's just from my personal experience. And then here's where I really struggled with the color palette, because I wanted to make it look, very cartoony and very stylized, but, these colors just weren't meshing together, because before this, I was so used to using monochrome color palettes, so I would just, use like 5 different shades of blue, 5 different shades of pink, 5 different shades of purple, or whatever, And I was going like too far in the other direction, where it just looked very scattered and the color palette didn't make sense. And then this is where I realized that I didn't put the floor in. I didn't put a floor. And so then I put in a floor. But then, so I just realized, okay, I need to, stick to my roots. And so then I made a, like, very monochrome purple. And then I just added in a really bright red, for vampire. So, I stuck to what I knew, but then I went a little bit out of my comfort zone with that. And then don't even pay attention to what I'm doing with the shadows. I have no idea where this damn light is coming from. The light and shadows in this piece are all over the place because I have no idea what I was doing. And then I think this specific sort of Passover is where I started making the line art. Because I wanted to, sometimes I go back and forth on this. Sometimes this sketch includes me laying down the color, and sometimes I go through like the entire process of the line art first, and then I start worrying about color. It just depends on how dependent the illustration itself is on the color, or, what I'm most excited for about the illustration. So like if there's an illustration where the idea was the color palette, or the idea was the lighting, that's what I would, focus on and start on, and that would be a very involved part of the sketch. But if the idea was just about, like the concept or the design, then I would mostly, like, go through the entire process of the line art, and then go into the, like, color and shading and stuff. But one thing that, I actually didn't figure out until a couple of weeks ago is that when you're drawing stuff from a reference photo, or when you're drawing stuff from like a life or like a still life or a person, one thing that I did a lot is that I would put in the shadows first, and then I would go back in and carve out the light. And, I would do that whether I was doing, like digital or painting or charcoal. I would go in and like erase and put in a light source, or, scrape off paint and put in a light source after I did the shadows. But if I'm doing it digitally, it really helps to put in ambient light, and then put in ambient light and put in like where like the brightest thing in the room is, and then go from there and make the shadow. Because in digital art, you at least the way I do it, I know a lot of people do incredibly like painterly digital art, which I look at in awe. I cannot do like oil paint-esque digital art for the life of me. I've tried to render several times, and it just looks so bad, and I don't have fun doing it. If I had fun trying to figure out how to do it, I would definitely put in the work and the practice. But I just have more fun doing, more illustrative styles like this. But what was I talking about? Ambient light. This is an incredibly rambly. Hi, this is the Reagan TED Talk of the incredibly rambly illustration. Anyway, so you put in the ambient light first and then the shadow, especially in digital art, because there really isn't an opportunity for it to get muddy like it would in a traditional painting. So yeah, also I do have like I did have a bit of cold like a week ago, so if my voice sounds weird, that's what it is. If you've been wondering, it's been what, 15 minutes, 14 minutes, and 50 seconds. And if you're like, why does their voice sound like, that's why my voice sounds like that. but, you know, don't worry about it. I'm just, my throat just hurts, and I decided that this would be the day to talk for 19 minutes and 22 seconds straight for content. Anyway, so this is the line art of this drawing that I made, and I think this drawing itself was sort of the start of me drawing incredibly detailed pieces, because doing this was incredibly meditative, like I said before, and this is me sort of like blocking in these colors. Don't ask me why I did it like that. Don't ask me why I didn't do color fill. Fuck if I know. I have no idea. I'm dumb. I'm a dumbo. Dumb. Sometimes you just look back at things that you did a year ago and you say, that was really dumb. And you would be right. That was very dumb. Anyway, so this is me looking back at the like sketch that I did for like where all of the colors would go down, and then making a new layer where it's like cleaner, which again took an incredibly long amount of time. One thing that always surprises me about I guess like speed paints and like making like having Procreate make speed paints is that you always think that like the coloring and like the like lighting and detailed work is like a longer process than it is, but it's not. Like it's like the last maybe 8 seconds of a speed paint, and the rest of it is like the sketch and the line art. At least for me, that's one thing that I've noticed, is that it doesn't take nearly as long as I think it did. And, you know, looking back at this and me trying to, like, I'm trying to give, like, the wall texture without giving the wall texture, which, why did I do that? I don't know. And then this is me doing the shadow. And, it does look kind of scary right now, but then, you know, lower the opacity, but right now I'm having it here at full opacity, so I have like incredibly like deliberate, I'm incredibly deliberate with where I put it. And also you can see like the layer below it is where I did sort of like a sketch, quote unquote sketch layer of the shadows, and I'm using that as a reference to make like a cleaner shadow layer. And once again, I have no idea where this light source is coming from. I think it's coming from like the top left corner, but then again, it might be sort of like a overhead fan situation, but you know, we can't see that. It's out of frame. It's an out of frame general ambient light, so that's what it is. And then I just add the lighting, and I believe I add a layer of noise on top of it to give it some grain and texture, and that's pretty much it for this illustration. And you know, thank you for listening to my ramblings. I hope you found them entertaining. I'm sure that they were not educational in the slightest, and probably hard to follow, but thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting me and my art. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a very lovely day. Goodbye.